Okay, so on this one, we're trying to add these two fractions together, and notice they have different denominators. What do you have to do when you add fractions with different denominators? Step one is to find a common denominator. And what is the common denominator? One, well, I guess we have a couple of things here. The numbers in the front, like 2 and the 5, multiply together, or multiply them together, or find a bigger number. They both go into. Either way. So 2 times 5, so I'm going to go 2 times, yes, I'll do it on the side. Oops. Open the thing here. So that's going to be 2 times 5, 10. So 10, that's that part of the deal. And then the second part for the letters, 1 of each type of letter to the highest power that is showing. So when it comes to x, we have x to the 5th and regular x. So we're going to take x to the 5th, and that's the higher one. And we got y and y to the 4th, so we're going to take y to the 4th. So we take one of the two x's and one of the two y's, the one with the highest power showing. So this right here is what we call the LCD. It's the least common denominator. Okay, now that's step number 1. Find the common denominator. Got it. Step number 2. What are we going to do about that? So let me bring down the original question right here. 7x over 2x to the 5th 1 plus 3y over 5x y to the 4th. Okay. And now that we have the common denominator, so step number 2, let me just start writing it over here so it'll be a little easier. Step number 2, you're going to multiply top and bottom of each fraction to make all denoms the same. So in other words, my goal, let me bring it on down here, make it clear. Our goal is to make both of these denominators become 10 x to the 5th y to the 4th, 10 x to the 5th y to the 4th. In other words, the common denominator, right? We want to make both of them have the same, that's why we call it common denominator. So how do we do that? We have to multiply top and bottom to make that happen. What do you mean top and bottom? Well, we have to come to this one first off and go, okay, what do we, remember, you can do anything you want to a fraction as long as you do the same thing to the top and the bottom of each fraction, because that way you're not changing the fraction. If you do the same thing to the top and the bottom, you haven't really changed the fraction. So how do I make 2x to the 5th y become 10x to the 5th y to the 4th? Because that's the deal, right? You want to make this become that. You want to make them both to make all denominators the same common denominator, right? So what would you need to do to 2x to the 5th y to make it match 10x to the 5th y to the 4th? Well, it needs a 5 times 2 would be 10, and it needs y to the 3rd, because this is really y to the 1, and those powers will add. Do you see that? And then whatever you do to the bottom, you have no choice but to do the same thing to the top, so you don't change the fraction. So, right? So you see what I'm saying? I'm saying you've got to multiply this denominator by 5y cubed times this. What will happen when we do that? Well, 2 times 5 will be 10. And x to the fifth is x to the fifth, and y to the 1 and y to the third powers will add y to the fourth. So it does come out to be the common denominator perfectly when we multiply the bottom by 5y to the third. And so now you got to also do the top. What happens up there? 7 times 5 is 35. And x to the 1 is just x, y to the third. Is that making sense? Now let's do the second one right here. What do we got to do top and bottom? Well, you look at this one and this one. You say, okay, what does it take? 5 times 2. And then we need x to the fourth, don't we? So 5xy to the fourth times 2x to the fourth. 5 times 2 is 10. And this is x to the 1. And x to the 4 means x to the 5. And y to the 4, y to the 4. It works perfectly. When you multiply these two, it becomes the common denominator. And whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do the same thing to the top so you don't change the fraction. And so what becomes from them? 2 times 3 is 6. And we got x to the fourth. I'll put the x first and then the y, like that. So that makes sense what happened. I just multiplied top and bottom of this fraction by the same thing to make the denominator common, and multiplied top and bottom of this fraction by the same thing. So it doesn't change the fraction, just changes the way it looks. And then that'll make its denominator also the same. So now these guys have the same denominator. So then on step 3, come on down here. Step 3, now combine to one fraction because they have a common denominator. So we don't need to have 2 of them anymore. We can just say, okay, they are together now, 10x to the fifth, y to the fourth, and then just bring down what we've got here. 35xy cubed plus, and then the other one, 6x to the fourth y. And really we're done right there. Unless I'm missing something. Am I missing something? Oh yeah, no, we can do a little bit more, can't we? Yeah, we're not quite done. So good, we combined to one fraction. We made them into one fraction, right? Why could we put these together? Because they have the same denominator. So once they have the same denominator, common denominator, then you don't need 2 of them. You can combine them to just be one fraction. So we did that. We combined them to be one fraction, common denominator. Now, they're one fraction. That's been the whole goal all along, right? To make 2 fractions become one fraction. We've done that. And now step 4 is reduce or simplify. I'll just say reduce. Reduce or simplify. Now, what does that mean? Can I just go, okay, yeah, here we go. X cancels one of these, and then x to the fourth, y to the third leaves y to the 1, the y's cancel. No, I can't do any of that, can I? Why not? Because they're added on the top, right? You cannot cancel added or subtracted items. You know that, right? Reduce, but you cannot cancel added, subtracted items. Instead, what do we do instead of that? How do we get around that problem? You know, seen it a lot now. You factor the top. I'm going to factor the top, meaning I'm going to look up here to the top. I'm going to say, hey, what do they have in common? What goes into 35 and into 6? I don't think anything. That's just 5 times 7, right? This is just 2 times 3. So those don't have anything in common. How about x's? Do they both have? Yeah, they both have an x in common. So I can take out an x. Let me bring down the whole fraction thing. I can take out an x on the top. And what about y's? Yeah, and a y. Now, how did I know? Well, when you look at these two, they both have x's and y's. And how do you know what to take out? You take out the lowest because it's what they have in common. So the lower power of x is just plain x, not the x to the fourth. And the lower power of the y is the plain y, not the y to the third. So you take out what's in common, what they share. We're saying, what do these guys share in common? They both have an X and a Y. Okay, and then we put a parenthesis. And then what does that leave? Well, XY times 35y squared. Do you see that? Because the y1 and the y2 add to be y to the third. Plus, and then the next one. XY times what? 6, x to the third. Right? Because the x1, the x3 makes x4. Like that, over the denominator. 10x to the fifth, y to the fourth. We good there. Now we can reduce, right? You cannot cancel add and subtract that. Instead, factor the top, and now cancel only, multiply that. That's why we factor, so that we can cancel multiplied items. So what exactly can cancel? Well, this x can cancel this, leaving x to the fourth, and this y can cancel this, leaving y to the third. And that's it. That's all that we can really cancel there. Right? You think, well, cancel this guy. You know what? No, he's an added item. We can't cancel him. So we are there. What are we left with? On the top, so this x and y have canceled out from the front. And so we have 35y squared plus 6x cubed. And on the bottom, we have what? 10. Now x to the fourth, y to the third. And we're done right there. That's as far as we can go. How do you get, can't you cancel these guys? No, these are added items. You don't need the parentheses on the top anymore because there's nothing to separate it from, because the xy that was in the front has canceled into one of the x's and one of the y's in the bottom. And so there's our answer right there. And that's as far as we go. Let's recap. So what happened there? To add these two fractions, we had to first find a common denominator. So we multiplied the numbers in front, 2 times 5 to be 10. And for the letters, we took one of each type to the highest power. So it turned out to be, we had x to the fifth was the highest power of x, and y to the fourth was the highest power of y. That's the common denominator. Multiply the numbers, take the highest powers on x and y. So the common denominator right here was going to be, we brought that down. We said that's going to become the new denominator. So you see how we brought it down right here? 10x to the fifth y is going to be the new denominator. But now, along with the new denominator, we need to have a new top, new numerator. So we said, okay, how do we do that? Well, we looked at the denominator and said, what do we got to multiply it by to make that common? And we did that top and bottom, got the new tops, put them together into one fraction because now they have the same denominator. And then we had to reduce. And how do you reduce? You factor, because you cannot cancel added and subtracted items. You have to factor. Once you've got that xy factored in the front, now it's a multiplied xy, right? It's not added or subtracted. It's a multiplied xy. So you can cancel like that. And so what are we left with? This right here. There we go.